Well, welcome to the Skillwork Forum, where we focus on industry issues, emerging trends, and challenges surrounding the skilled trades and the overall workforce. So, as for those that watch this podcast occasionally, you know I'm not usually in this seat. I usually get to sit over there in the seat that this guy's in, who I'm going to introduce here in a second. So we have the real privilege today of having a guest, which we don't get to do a lot. We got Brett Hoogeveen, who is the co-founder of BetterCulture. You know, we're going to talk on a subject today about how to retain employees long term. And really at Skillwork, you know, we're really probably more the company that manages in the gap when you can't. And so we really felt the opportunity to bring Brett in, and we'll get into what his company does, but they're really more of the experts in this space. And so, you know, as we try to provide value and thought overall, not just, you know, this isn't a commercial for what we do. We thought it'd be great to bring somebody like Brett in. So Brett Hoogeveen is the co-founder of BetterCulture. They're a product and technology company intently focused on making the world a better place to work. He's a former healthcare executive, retired engineer, and startup investor. If you haven't noticed yet, Brett and I have the same name. Helps organizations build stronger leaders and engage every employee. So, with that said, Brett, thanks for being here. Your company, BetterCulture, is laser focused on company culture. So this may be an obvious question, but can you explain why organizations should care about the culture and why culture matters in a business?
Yeah, absolutely, Brett. So I do appreciate that you say it may be an obvious question, and increasingly it is an obvious question. I mean, name me a business that doesn't say that they care about the experience their employees have, right? That doesn't care about their culture. If you go back 20 or 30 years, you probably could find more than a handful of organizations that didn't think that company culture and employee experience was a top priority. But today, in almost every industry, most employers have realized that if they want to be able to attract and motivate and build and keep talent, they've got to think about intentionally what is the experience we're providing to those employees. You know, what is the type of culture that we're creating, right? And I think in your business and for your clients that are trying to attract and keep good people, one of the most powerful ways to focus on doing that is to think about, well, what's the culture that we're putting them into every day, and do they love it?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it's one of those things, you know, Brett, I'm sure you hear it all the time too. I don't know a company out there that doesn't say our most important asset are our employees, you know, but then is that really the culture that you have in type thing? So tell me about BetterCulture. What does BetterCulture actually do? What services do you guys provide your clients? You know, give us that piece.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you that piece. I want to comment on one thing you said, because when I do sometimes a keynote or a presentation, I've got a slide that says culture owns talent. And I think in a lot of ways that's true for organizations that are trying to, again, attract and keep people. And so when you say people are our most important resource, I think that's so true for almost every organization. So what are you doing about it to make sure that you can keep it? How are you focusing on that culture? BetterCulture as an organization, we are very focused on what can we do to help organizations that want to be better and better places to work, that want to improve their people practices. How can we equip them to do that as straightforwardly and easily as possible? So we primarily have three services that we provide. The background for BetterCulture, we used to run a very high-touch, in-person, high-cost management consulting practice. And when we would work with a client, we would really listen and we would say, what are you trying to accomplish? And how can we build a custom program and experience to help them on that path? But we were not able to keep growing our business when we were so reliant on being hands-on and customizing to every single client. So we said, well, what are the three things? What are the primary services that every organization that's focused on culture needs? And how can we build scalable solutions on that front? So those three services are an employee engagement survey. If you want to care about your culture, you've got to be able to put your thumb on it and measure it and get an accurate sense of how do my employees feel about their company. So we offer our BetterCulture survey as a great way to get a baseline. After that, we believe that cultures are built both from the top down and from the bottom up. And so we offer two products that are easy to implement inside organizations. One is a leadership development initiative program that we can hand to an organization that they can take and run with. So for companies that say, hey, we wish we were developing our leaders, we wish we had options for that, inside of a few days, we can give them a program that they can internalize, that they can take ownership of, that their leaders will love and benefit from. So growing and developing the skill sets of leaders from the top down. And then lastly, every organization that cares about culture should be focused on what do they expect from every employee? What are the core values, the company values that sort of come from the bottom up in an organization? We built a new product called our 20 Tenets of Culture that automates 20 key messages that apply across every industry that we say, take this product, put it in front of every single one of your employees, and on a regular cadence, your whole company will have opportunities to have conversations around values and behaviors that matter, that if everybody embraces them from the bottom up, it'll help each individual be successful, it'll help teams function more effectively, and ultimately the organization will be building a better and stronger culture from the bottom up.
That's great. I mean, we're at Skillwork, while we impact cultures out there with our clients by providing them, the skills that they need, which really helps with the burnout and all the other things that are going on. But then here internally in our office, Brett got to walk through today, and you can usually feel it. You can usually feel whether there's a healthy culture, that at least initially. That may not tell you everything, but definitely we stand on some very strong values, and I can feel pretty confident. I've got one employee that's probably been out there maybe 10 days, might not be able to tell you what our 3 values are, but everybody else can. And
yeah.
so
if I could just say on that front, so I've been in your studio here for 25 minutes, and I think I've met 16 people. I don't need to run our BetterCulture survey to be able to tell you that you guys have an incredible culture here, and you have some incredible people. I can tell people love what they do, love the organization, and you can feel it walking through this space. So that's what we try to do for other people.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So are there specific industries that you guys work primarily with, or kind of what's your universe?
I wish the answer to that was yes. I really do wish we had a focused industry that we said, we really try to go deep in one area. But when it comes to culture, and honestly, when it comes to what employees, what human beings want and appreciate from a manager or from an employer, it's pretty universal stuff. And so we have applied a lot of the same principles and practices with cattle ranching operations, with financial companies, with technology and healthcare, across almost every industry. When it comes to leadership and what people want from leaders, really doesn't vary from industry to industry.
That's pretty much your words. So, well, today, specifically, we wanted to talk about retaining employees, and so which obviously, especially we're in a season that I think we're going to be in for quite some time, where there's a shortage of talent. Mm-hmm. And so if you have that talent, you really need to try to retain it. And so, we wanted to specifically talk about it. So that's a big pain point for lots of employers. And so what advice do you have for employers who want to improve their ability to keep their best employees?
Retention, right? It's a big topic. And there's a lot of things that go into it. When we run our engagement survey, that's one of our 14 factors that we report on, is what's your retention risk? What's the likelihood that employees are thinking about doing something else? And it is a hard thing to keep your thumb on, because there are a lot of variables that affect whether or not somebody is happy in their job and whether or not they're going to tell you if they're happy in their job. A lot of the things that cause employee dissatisfaction are addressable if you just can have a conversation, can listen to your employees, have an open mind, are willing to change. And so I could give you 100 answers to that question. I'll try to give you maybe 3 or 4 practical things.
Okay.
The first, I would say, is, are you finding ways to invest in your people? To give them a sense that they are growing and developing by being a part of your current company in their current position. So that this is different than saying, hey, I'm going to give you a promotion opportunity or a direction you will go very, very soon. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, am I learning and growing inside my organization, or am I just stagnant doing a job? When people feel like their employer is investing in them and helping them grow and improve and cares about their success both at work and maybe even outside of work in life, that builds loyalty. And that's the type of perspective that people think, okay, I'm more than a job description. I'm more than just fulfilling a certain role for the moment inside this organization. This organization cares about me, and they're helping me become a better employee and a better person. So anything you can do in that realm to develop people, to invest in people, even especially more broadly as far as just their success in life, really comes back to the company many times over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys recommend and do it. I know here we do. We do a variety of one-to-ones, and there's you got to know your team and you got to know your people a little bit. But in my one-to-ones that I do, with my direct reports, and I'll do some cross-functional type or skip one-to-one type thing, skip level type thing. But we always spend a portion of that time talking about what's going on in life. Type of thing, and you're right. I mean, now I'm not. I always say, hey, this, you're not obligated to tell me, how was your last date, kind of a thing. But I want to be available. I want you to know, like you said, we've always said it here, and it can be cliche, but if you're not careful, but I think, I truly believe it here is that I don't ever really want to hire anybody for a job. If you can create a culture where somebody's buying into the purpose and, oh, hey, by the way, there's a job you need to do.
Yep.
It's a different deal. So what you're saying is for sure. So what else in that space?
Sure. So right on that same note, I think you led me in a great direction there. If you're an employer and you want to just get a sense of how you're doing from a cultural perspective, or if you're an employee and you want to put your employer to the test here, right on that note, Brett. Shallow relationships between an employee and an employer are an indication of a culture that could use some improvement, right? So if you ask yourself, if you're an employer, what level of relationship do I have? If you're a manager, what level of relationships do I have with my employees? Do they run deep? Do I know something about the people that actually work here? That there's a huge positive indication between having a deep and personal relationship and having a strong culture. The opposite can also be said. If you're an employee and you ask a group of employees, tell me about your job, tell me about your company, and you get back responses like, it's a job, pays the bills, it's what I'm doing for now. That's an indication of a really shallow relationship the other way between the employee and that employer. What you'd love to hear is, oh my gosh, do you have 10 minutes? Let me tell you about my company. Let me tell you about the people I work with. Let me tell you about the founding principles or the mission of what we do, right? Those indicate a really deep relationship between employee and employer, and that's a really positive indication of a great culture and ultimately, but way better than average employee retention.
Yeah, no, those are great. So do you guys, when you work with companies, I guess I got two different questions going in my head here that are not related. But one is, do you see a difference one or the other, whether it's a small company or a large company, when it comes to these shallow relationships? I mean, I think the natural, you assume the bigger you are, that's more likely, but I don't know if that's, because it really comes down to those individual managers, I guess.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, do you see it in big and small?
You do. I think it's easier in a smaller employer to take a more personal touch and to know your people, and the smaller the team, the easier that is. And oftentimes, the closer employees are to the founder, to the owner, to the decision makers, right? And that fosters an increased level of communication and trust, and that's a foundation for those relationships. But absolutely, even in a big, huge company, somewhere between 50 and 70% of how any employee feels about their whole company is tied to the relationship they have with their boss, their direct manager, right? Their team and their boss. And so any leader that wants to strengthen their team and control retention in their unit should really be leaning into making sure that they have a genuine relationship with their employees. And I know that's easier with some employees than it is for others, but to go into a job with the perspective that, work and life are totally separate is setting people up for high turnover. You can believe that at your own risk, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I know this is an obvious answer, but I'm curious do you guys, so when you talk about a company having core values, you talk about a company having a mission statement, are those things that when you work with companies, do they typically already have that and then you're seeing how it's living out, or do you guys actually get all the way to the front end where you help them pull that out? And so, let's just start, what are your values? How do you define them?
So we've done that work over the last decade, and candidly, we're intentionally trying to do less of let me work with every individual company and pull your values out or recraft your values. That's good work, and organizations should do it. We're doing a little bit less of it because we think through our new 20 tenets approach that we can take 20 essentially universal core values that almost no organization would disagree with, and we could say, we infuse it into organizations through technology to where from the bottom up, we can encourage individual employees to reflect and teams to have conversations around these 20 attitudes and behaviors. I mean, they're simple things. Yeah. Things like how coachable are you? Meaning how actively interested are you in growth and feedback from other people? Being friendly and making friendships, being thoughtful, being practically helpful, not gossiping, things like that. These are basic things, but what you find out is, our 20 tenets overlap pretty darn well with most companies' core values, and B, the real value in any set of values, whether it's your company's core values or our 20 tenets, is are people focused on them? Are they talking about them? Are they doing anything to try to either gauge whether or not they're aligned with them? And especially, are they doing anything to try to improve, to work toward living those values out even better? And systematizing that and creating a cadence of conversation around those types of things is how companies get value from their values, right? And what you find is a lot of companies don't get much value from their values because they're not systematizing what are managers doing with those values, how are employees interacting with those values, what are we doing to make sure that those values are actually shaping our culture.
Yeah, I can, I've been doing this long enough that I've, worked for a few companies, I've started my own companies and a variety of different things. But I think I find, and you can speak into this if you want, but I've been in some places where the values almost work in reverse because it's like they're on the wall, they're there, but nobody is doing them.
Yep.
And they don't feel the leadership is really honest to them. So it almost becomes everybody's talking about it at the water cooler about, right, kind of a thing. So it's almost, I don't know, I mean, I don't recommend that any company not have any values, but if you're going to have them, you need to be able to make sure you're really living them.
Live them, yeah. Hey, if you want to test, do your employees know what your values are? Okay, 80% of companies out there just failed. Okay, trust me, if you think all of your employees know your values, most companies are going to be disappointed. They don't. So of those that are left, are those values having an impact? Do they really represent the organization anymore? Are there other values that you're missing that you do care about? In many cases, I think fewer is better for values, right? So organizations that only have 3 is a great number because you can really focus on them. They can mean something and people will remember them. Fundamentally, though, drop me into any company that has a great set of core values. I could add another one. I could add another 2 that would matter. And they would say, I want my people to do that. And so that's why with our 20 tenets approach, we found 20 of those things. And we said, why don't companies just have conversations about these things and get people focused on growth and improvement on these things? And that'll help every organization's culture from the bottom up. So it's not a replacement for your values, but it's a way to make sure employees are working on these basic things.
Yeah, and almost more, because like you said, I mean, values vary, in different ways, but I'm sure the 20 tenets kind of, like you said, it more feeds into, are you living those values? Is your organization really, we talk about ours. And like you said, I'm not really too tempted very often to to change. I definitely won't change our values. Every now and then somebody will be like, well, maybe we should add.
Right.
I'm like,
You shouldn't add. I'm not saying you should.
I'm like, no, these are our values. I think it encompasses, who we are and what we do. And so for listeners that they want to learn more about BetterCulture or where they should go, give me some of that. And then if there's anything that we didn't hit on that you're like, hey, I've just thought of this, I really want to share it, but I want to give you an opportunity on both of those. So
sure. Let me tackle your second question first, Brett. One other thing that I think is good advice for anybody focused on retention, probably outside of manager relationships, which you touched on earlier, probably the biggest factor that's going to end up causing people to leave your organization is if you as a management team don't address your poor performers, your people who are negative, cynical, who don't fit the culture, who are non-performers that don't get their job done, so other people have to cover for them or do extra work. There's probably not a bigger poison to company culture or a bigger reason that people leave organizations than having to work side by side with somebody that's what we call a vacuum, an energy vacuum, right? Somebody that's just hard to work with, or that I'm constantly having to cover for or work around or do more than my fair share because of them. And if you don't address that and sort of cull out those folks that are making life miserable for other people or causing more work for other people, then trust me, it's not your star performer that's going to be there 3 years from now. It's that underperforming employee who's too comfortable. So I know that's tough medicine, but that's one really, really big advice to organizations that are trying to work on retention. Figure out why people are leaving and address those problems. So.
We're doing, we do a book study, every, pretty much always have one going that for the most part, they're always, you can come if you want. Tim and I, my business partner, who's usually on here with me, we tend to run those and we invite. We're doing one right now that it was as close to mandatory as I've made a book study, but I didn't make it 100% mandatory. but pretty much everybody's part. But we're doing Stephen Covey's book, The Speed of Trust.
Sure.
And so and in there, he talks about trust. I think a lot of people, they say, well, you're an honest person. I can trust you. You have good character. You won't lie to me. Yeah, but that's kind of that's what it costs to get in the game. But the reality is, to your point on the retention on the poor performers, Covey, says it's character and competence or capability. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have the ability to do the job, it's like you might trust me from a standpoint of, yeah, he's a good guy, he's honest, he's this and that. But if you need to have surgery on your back, you're probably not going to trust me to
Absolutely.
do that. And so I think it becomes a little bit. I think trust erodes in an organization when they see the leadership leave poor performers.
Yep.
In that, and I think we have to recognize that, as difficult as it can be, because it's like always. I mean, everybody else already knows by the time you do something about it.
Yep. It's one of the hardest things in the moment because nobody wants to. Those conversations aren't fun. So it's one of the hardest things in the short term, but it's one of the most valuable things you can do in the long term for an organization. Is just be realistic about, if you say we care about excellence and we say we care about XYZ. You have to. It can't be, like you said earlier, one of those slogans on the wall that nobody does anything about, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure. So what else? What else do you for people to learn more about BetterCulture? What's a couple ways they can do that?
Sure. Probably the easiest way is check out our website at BetterCulture.com. We've got some minimal social media presences out there as well that you can find on various platforms. But BetterCulture.com is the best way to go. If you want to drop me a note, you can shoot me a note at Brett@BetterCulture.com. Brett with 2 T's. That's the way to be, right, Brett?
That is the only way to spell it.
But other than that, I think that's usually the best way to get a look at most of our products and services.
Okay, great. Well, hey, we really appreciate, obviously, Brett, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I think for both of us, it should be, if you're watching this podcast and you are a manager or you're an owner of a company, anything, obviously culture matters. You said it at the beginning. I don't remember the exact saying, culture something, but I mean it's huge. I mean you can't ignore it. And so just like if you can't find skilled trade people, we'd ask you to come and see us and talk to us. We can help you in that. If you need help to build a better organization and retention of your talent, companies like Brett and his company at BetterCulture, reach out and get those resources. This stuff it's simple, but it's in the midst of everything else we have to do in a day. It's like I say, the truth is, an HR company or an HR department in a company, technically they can do what we do, but they got a lot of other stuff to do too, and this is all we do. It's the same for you.
It is.
Yeah. The HR, technically, I guess they should do it, but there's great resources and there's great organizations to partner with, and obviously you guys are doing that. So
absolutely. Yeah, we know leaders and organizations are busy, and it's funny. We thought by scaling our business down to a product company would be good for us. Because we don't have to invest quite so much time one-on-one with each individual client. We've actually found it's good for the clients too, because they're saving time by implementing these solutions that way as well.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. So like we said, thank you so much, as always, for joining us here on the Skillwork Forum. If you need help in your skilled trade space, you can always reach out or take a look at our website, skillwork.com. I'm sure it's on your screen right now. We have another podcast. We always want to encourage you, especially if you're a skilled worker, to go take a look at it. It's really geared more towards that. It's called the Proud Skilled Worker Show. Take a look at that. And then we always like to do a quick little shout out to our partners at Texas Boys Outdoors. We're their sponsor of their show on that they do on. They do a great work with first responders and a lot of kids that are going through some challenges, and that time they get them out. They do hunting, they do fishing, they do those kinds of things. So the guys at Texas Boy, you can find them on the Pursuit channel is where their show runs, and they're all over Facebook and those places. So again, until next time, God bless, and just thank you for joining us here at the Skillwork Forum.